Korean barbecue will perhaps never be the same again, thanks to a cheap Chinese battery in one of Three Prong's finest EQE electric cars. Satan's official car maker really has done some exceptional work this week. That vehicle was not on charge or even running when it went Vesuvius. It hadn't even been driven for 2 and a bit days. 23 people were injured, 140 cars were destroyed. One car park is essentially toxic toast. Many residents of the block above are living in glorified tents because their apartments are uninhabitable and they can't live in them either. And a bajillion won in used, unmarked, non-sequential bills will probably not cover the repair bill. We could learn a thing or three from all of this if only Australian politicians were not A, so jaw-droppingly useless, and B, so brainwashed over the tantalising twin pole dancer prospects of electric utopia and the fantasy we know and love called net zero. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card! In the evening of July 29 at 7:16 p.m, do you remember where you were then? I know I don't. A South Korean dude with more than adequate money, but also, let's be realistic, fairly crap taste in cars, parked his gorgeous Mercedes EQE in the underground car park of his apartment domicile in beautiful Chongadonga, which, now that I think about it, is the most Australian South Korean name I have ever encountered. Chongadonga is in Incheon, which is like a bit of an ultra-modern growth on Seoul's left buttock by the Yellow Sea, which I imagine is kind of similar to Australia's Dingo Piss Creek in a deeply cultural way. Beautiful Chongadonga. Just heading out to Chongadonga for a brewski with Mars and Trev, babe. Check ya! I wonder, is that cultural appropriation? Irrespective, I would have to stop for a bogan martini or two, which is basically just a bottle of gin with a little bamboo umbrella in the top, if I saw a sign saying Chongadonga Hotel. The flesh is weak. Anyway, our hero's gorgeous EQE sat there quietly in Chongadonga for a couple of days, just another monument to green masturbation among, I'm sure, many before the cheap Chinese nickel manganese cobalt battery went into thermal runaway entertainingly and hilariously after that started off-gassing highly flammable and, let's not forget, toxic vapours, as they do. Safe and effective. Of course, this chemistry also has the lowest temperature threshold to establish thermal runaway. In other words, if ex-wife number 5 walks past, it's basically a done deal. Dude, she was so hot, that woman. Anyway, a few moments later, those gases ignited. The hilarious thing about this process is that the friction generated by the off-gassing as the gas rushes out of its container, i.e. the cell, that can be sufficient to cause the toxic mixture to auto-ignite. So isn't that fun? This stuff, therefore, really is the ex-wife who can't say no, isn't it? It requires no external source of ignition, such as the spark which a gasoline-air vapour mixture would require in a similar situation, and it brings its own oxygen to the party, which is produced as the electrolyte decomposes exothermically. Talk about self-contained, like... There's almost no warning when you watch the video. There's smoke and then flames. Like, there's no time to act, in other words. So just change a few variables, do a little thought experiment in the Matrix. You and the kids might happen to be out, just enjoying the weather, casing the local Westpac and planning your next uplifting bank job or something. or just out for ice cream, if you see smoke like that coming from a freaking vehicle, dude, run upwind. And if the smoke is coming like directly towards you, run sideways. And then when there's reasonable lateral separation, run upwind. I'm not kidding. Do it. Do not stop. Do not whip out your phone and start to film, because this really is not the ideal opportunity for citizen journalism. I'm not kidding about that either. Cobalt compounds and human skin, like, bad combination, dude. There's a staggering amount of quite evil, vile, toxic shit in that 3-prong shitbox's battery. And it is not alone. Hundreds of kilos of it, all gagging for it. You don't have to breathe some of this shit in, right? Just getting it on your skin is sufficient for the Grim Reaper. I'm sure he's got stock. There's no way to fight this kind of fire in an underground car park, obviously, but there's actually no way to fight this kind of fire out in the open on the street. In that situation, at least, the toxins dissipate in the free air, don't they? And the firefighters can spray water on the trappings of nearby civilization to kind of limit the destruction, if you're lucky. There's some speculation in media reports concerning this issue that the sprinkler system in the car park was not functional. And frankly, South Korea does have a pretty shit record on this kind of thing, like fire safety. Do we really need that? Conventional sprinklers might have limited the damage a bit, but they can't hope to extinguish a battery fire of this nature, right? It's just ridiculous to speculate like that. They can't do that. They're not designed for that. This thing just lit up like the 4th of July, seemingly spontaneously, and it was not even charging at the time, nor was it running. Luckily, and we are talking a fairly small silver lining in the cloud here, admittedly, luckily, the vapours were not too contained when it went up, so they burned energetically as opposed to exploding. When I think about it, Wrangler hybrids are actually much better at exploding because the battery vents into the passenger space, because the floor of the passenger compartment is the ceiling of the battery. Like, good idea, good design choice. When the passenger compartment fills up with explosive vapour, it blows up and it blows bits off at speed. There's shrapnel. It could be worse in some situations. This stuff is not high explosive, however. High explosive generates a supersonic shock wave, which is very destructive for other reasons. When a battery goes up, it's just a deflagration. Like, it's pretty serious, but there is a distinction which you can look up. It's kind of interesting if you like the mad science of how things destroy themselves. The battery in that Mercedes shitbox was manufactured in China by a company you've probably never heard of called Ferasis, which 3-prong recently owns 3% of. In fact, Ferasis has a 10-year supply agreement in place with Satan's official car maker, so they must both love that. Ferasis is also absolutely not a stranger to issuing fire risk recalls for its batteries. In March of 2021, China's state-owned Beijing Automotive Group recalled almost 32,000 Ferasis battery-equipped shitboxes due to fire risk. So there's that. When you tweak battery chemistry for discharge, right, you decrease the stability of the chemistry intrinsically. This is the nature of engineering compromise, right? Thus, you open the door to events of this nature. The mid-spec EQE discharges at 215 kilowatts, I'm going to say, and it has a 90 and a bit kilowatt hour battery. This is a huge battery that is designed to discharge quickly, just saying. Even more hilariously, it's been revealed in the Chosun Daily, which quoted South Korean government sources here, that more than 3,000 EQEs sharing this identical entertaining battery are playing past the ticking time bomb on South Korean roads as we speak, metaphorically. So that's kind of exciting. the way three-prong rolls, okay? You don't see this, it's not in the brochure. However, they want you to pretend and or believe that their cars are just a cut above, engineered like no other car, even when they rebadge a Nissan Navara and call it a Mercedes. But in practice, under the hood, metaphorically, they screw every supplier down in the manner that only 3 floors of over-enthusiastic German bean counters could hope to. And they really have no objection whatsoever to using outdated, low-quality shit components wherever possible. Like, for example, until recently, they were driving their low-rent command online system using Windows XP. I'm not kidding. The only XP-powered device in one of those homes would have been that car, right? Because everything else would have been completely current, you know? So three-prong is kind of like Toyota, only minus the reliability and the solid resale value, I suppose. How cheaply can we acquire these batteries would have been such a key agenda item in the EQE design meetings. It just would have, you can tell. The South Korean Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport is, of course, investigating this incident. But unfortunately, they are, to me at least, the keystone cops of forensic investigation, and they typically mainline benzodiazepine when they're on the job, you know? Like, it took them 8 months, in 2018 to demand a BMW recall after 40 of the Bavarian money wasters caught fire. 40. They didn't all do it at once, right? But 40 had to catch fire, and it took them 8 months to decide that, you know, perhaps a recall might be, I don't know, prudent. Last weekend, the ministry demanded three-prong South Korea conduct inspections on the 3,000 as yet unincinerated EQEs on the roads, which must have seemed quite the impudent demand to Satan's car maker, which typically comports itself as if the rules somehow apply only to others. Ferasis Energy is the 8th largest battery maker in the world as of 2023, but they've been proudly jamming their toxic chemicals into three prongs since 2017. In addition to the EQE, they also supply batteries for the EQA and EQB, so won't it be positively trouser-soaking to see what happens in just a few years when some of those batteries turn 10. Personally, as a journalist, I can't wait, although I'm not looking forward to any human tragedy that stems from the consequences. Given the extent of the damage here, which is pretty freaking extensive, the root cause might be literally up in smoke, mightn't it? And therefore, it may be an enduring mystery despite the diligence of the ministry's investigation. Three-pronged PR operatives are doubtless hoping against hope for that outcome, because then they might be able to talk up its inconclusive nature. Until next time, kind of thing. But I would argue that what caused this was a battery off-gassing in the wrong place. And let's face it, also at the wrong time, but to be fair on that, the clock is always kind of jammed on the same time when this kind of thing occurs. It's always fucked up o'clock when 400 kilos of toxic EV battery self-immolates in your postcode, isn't it? The lesson here is quite simple when you reduce it to fundamentals. We need urgent safety standards for battery chemistry and construction. There needs to be independent endurance and accelerated life testing. We cannot allow fuckers such as Daimler and Ferasis to decide what the minimum acceptable safety standard for society is, can we? And we can't park freaking EVs deep in underground car parks where overhead sprinkler systems, if they work, are designed only to suppress far less severe fires which rely on atmospheric oxygen to sustain them. Now, before you, if you are that unique person, before you channel your inner virtuous green indignant twat in the comments below and tell me how safe batteries are and how there are so many more combustion fires than battery fires, I've heard it all before. And A, most combustion car fires arise from electrical faults in older cars. EVs are just as susceptible to this mode of failure, and the only distinction is that the EV fleet is, of course, still young. B, combustion car fires can be suppressed by sprinkler systems, if they work, and constrained further by limited ventilation in car parks. Battery fires cannot, dude. They just can't. This is called applied chemistry. There are rules. You don't have to like them. And C, let's ask the 23 injured this week, the owners of the 140 cars that were destroyed and the families who are living in glorified tents until hazmat crews can scrub the toxins from their homes, if they think the current approach to EV integration in society is more or less adequate from a risk management point of view. Finally, to our dipshit politicians here in Australia, such as Chris Bowen, Appeasement Albo, Catherine King, etc., the lapsed engineer in me would argue that these fuckwits at the National Monument to the Death of Integrity in Public Life have disgracefully put the cart before the horse on this one, deploying these dangerous vehicles among us before putting protections in place to keep society safe. I'm not saying don't have EVs, I'm saying systematically integrate the protection. That seems reasonable. Humans and battery toxins just don't mix, you political pelicans. Electric utopia is not heaven. Net zero is an emphatically bullshit concept. And even if these statements were not true, EVs are not enough to get us there. And even if they could, throwing public safety under the bus to achieve this is far too high a price to pay. It's not net zero at any cost for most of the people who vote in the next election. Incidentally, because I just looked it up, if you're worried about what I just said about politicians, the term fuckwit just means a stupid or contemptible person. To be stupid, you must do stupid things, and to be contemptible, you must disregard something that demands due consideration. Not putting the safety systems in place, effectively waiting for a local tragedy to catalyse some action here, is both stupid and contemptible. At least that's my honest opinion, so hey, if the hat fits. There's more than sufficient evidence now that this situation demands urgent, high-level unfucking.